Hey everybody, I am here with one of my favorite people in the world who is a shining example of being you in so many different ways. And this is Shannon O'Hara, and she does Access Consciousness. She also does something amazing called Talk to the Entities. And if you're going to do something like Talk to the Entities, you got to be you, right?
It's funny. I figured out I was weird after I became successful with Talk to the Entities. Good thing. It's actually not true. Before I started too, I didn't want to be, a freak. I didn't want to be seen as actually a freak. That was my biggest issue, that if I was me, if I admitted that I could hear spirits, that I would be judged and persecuted as a freak. And that was like, I had to make a really big choice. Am I willing to be me, even though I feel that I'm going to be rejected by the world if I be me? Fortunately, being me won. Fortunately, being me always wins.
I love that. That should be our slogan. Being you
always wins.
I think we've got a new. We're just going to cut that out right there.
And it's true too.
True story. So this, I love it. But you said, fortunately, being me won, which is an acknowledgement of that struggle that so many people have. Am I gonna fit in, or am I gonna be me? I mean, that essentially, and that's the weird part, is when you're being you, it's not about fitting in, it's about going wherever that leads you.
And isn't it, I mean, how many of you guys know this conflict where, if you choose for what you'd like to choose, or you be you know that you're going to be judged, you know that you're going to take some heavy hits on that path. And it's sort of like, it sucks that that's true, and you can do it.
Being you always wins.
Being you ultimately always wins, but there is that real like choice and challenge. What was that for you? Can I tell you? Wait, can I tell?
Oh, tell.
Okay. So I've known Dane for like a really long time, and at what we both we met in Santa Barbara, California, where we were both there. And
I was dying there. You were living.
I was growing up.
It was good.
And so met Dane, got into, showed Dane some access, but you were doing network chiropractic. You knew you were interested in something different. You were on your path doing your thing. Anyways, fast forward. We go to this psychic fair to do like booths. Like I was doing an access booth with bars, and you were doing like, I don't even know what you were doing, what you do.
Yeah, I was doing what I do. I was letting my freak flag fly.
So this was this psychic fair that's at some like school gymnasium, and you've got all the crystal vendors over there and the psychics over there. Dane gets front and center on the stage. And you had been given the advice by Gary Douglas to, what is it? Be outrageous.
Yeah, be outrageous.
And it's like one thing to say it and to take the advice, but then to really be it. And I'm Dane, and I don't know if any of you guys have seen, hopefully during Being You Day, we'll get to see some of the ESB, SOP stuff that Dane does, which he does not look normal when he's doing it. I'm going to say that, but you've never let that stop you. So Dane is like literally up on the stage in this gymnasium, like everyone's trying to sell their crystals and do their psychic reading, and Dane's like up on the stage, whirling the wizardry energy. And I remember being down, not on the stage, looking at Dane being like, shit, how are you doing that? How are you being that different, that exposed, that willing to be that outrageous? That's the first time I really saw your courage of being you and not letting people's judgments stop you from accessing the magic that you have available.
Wow. And what's funny is I had totally forgotten about that until you bring it up right now. And I remember that. And I remember also being terrified and excited.
Right.
Terrified because of, what are we terrified about? All the judgments.
Being judged and just being different, what all that.
Being judged, being different, I think really we're terrified of being free. We're terrified of not having somebody else be able to put us in a box.
Wow.
And I was terrified of that. And we say we're terrified of the judgments, which we think we are. I think we're really terrified of not giving a fuck about people's judgments, because then who would we be? Where would we be? Where would we go? And you bringing that up reminds me of that. And I was terrified, terrified and excited all at the same time.
I love that, terrified.
Totally, that was it, man. But like you said, being always wins when you choose it. But it's also a choice that we have. And I remember choosing it, and he said, be outrageous. And I went, fine. I'd been given permission to be outrageous for perhaps one of the first times in my life. And I was like, let's see where this leads.
Well, being outrageous is definitely something like I've seen really work for you. That it really works for you. Like you do outrageous like really well. Like Jane, you make outrageous look really good.
That's awesome. Thanks.
And I know this is like a conversation about being you, and being outrageous you being you doesn't mean you're always going to be outrageous. That's not the connection I'm trying to make here at all. And I think the being outrageous thing is in the context of making an impression on people and really showing up in the world, which is something you've been really committed to and interested in.
True. And being outrageous also is not at all what people think it is. You know, they think it's the overt expression, but in actuality, it's a space of being you're willing to be. And what you allow to go through your head that you wouldn't otherwise allow, you know, and be part of your space. Well, and speaking of outrageous and people who function outrageously, what is that for you? Like, I see you.
That's such a good question. When I am constantly questioning every single point of view that I have, and I'm constantly questioning, like, if anybody, even when my GPS tells me what to do, like, take a right here, and I'm like,
that's my girl. I don't even believe my GPS.
You know, it's like, so I'm constantly questioning. I never believe or buy what anybody says ever, including myself. And I think that's actually the most outrageous thing about me, is that it's almost impossible to tell me what to do or to get me to believe or buy anything without me really deeply questioning my own awareness. I think that's the most outrageous thing about me.
Well, I like that you said including myself. Meaning even your own points of view are up to be questioned.
Oh my God, totally.
And maybe, you know, truly being us is especially our own points of view are up to be questioned, because unless you're willing to question what you think are your points of view, you don't find out what is your real point of view.
Can I give an example of questioning our own points of view? So last night, there was a party here at this house where we were doing the filming. There was that Access staff party. And my husband was here, and we left the party. And we were waiting for our Uber out front, and he gave me like a really great kiss out in the driveway. And
the Uber driver? Questioning what's true for me.
My husband was giving me a really nice kiss out in the driveway while we were waiting for the Uber. And I noticed that after, like, in the end of the kiss, I was angry. And I noticed it, and instead of judging myself and making myself wrong, I shouldn't be angry, I should be whatever, all these things I should be, I went, okay, I noticed I'm angry, and then we just got in the car and drove home. Went to bed, woke up this morning, and I mentioned to my husband, I was like, so I had this thing come up last night. You know, I was angry, and I'm like wondering who I'm being, or is this me, or what am I aware of? So it's even these feelings or emotions and things that so many of us consider normal behavior. I mean, we live in a world where anger is considered a normal behavior, which I would like to question.
You and me both.
So it's really questioning, like, when everything comes up, like when I'm angry, when I'm confused, when I'm judgy, when there's any kind of like not ease, joy, and glory, I'm often questioning, like, who am I being? Is this someone else's? So always being in the question, I would say, is the most outrageous choice that I make.
Well, I love that about you. And, you know, you pointing that out is like, it's one of those where it's like, so let's say you had not been in the question. Because what most people do is, I'm angry, and then they look for a reason and justification for why I am angry.
Right.
Not, oh, anger was flying through the air and it slapped me in the face while I was making out with my hubby. You know what I mean? It's like, so what you do is you short circuit the potential black hole that you could create by staying as a question.
And I knew that anger wasn't being me. I know that when I'm an angry bitch, ladies, I know that that's not me. I know it isn't really me. So I have to question it. Anger. Okay. And this anger thing, I think, can segue into like a much larger conversation, which isn't really my intention, but because we have such amazing tools for dealing with so many amazing things. And being in the question constantly, let's face it, that's different. Truly.
Very different. But that's also an element of being, because part of this thing about being is, you know, we've probably said that word way too many times today already. Being you. But part of it is like,
okay, bringing back being.
Bringing being
Restoration
back.
of being.
Boom, we're done. That's it. But part of the thing about being is, what would an infinite being choose? Like a being that was being, what would that being be?
So that's a great question. What would an infinite being choose? That's one of the questions that I've used over the years to find me.
Yeah.
In the face of all of the stuff that life can throw at you.
Yeah. Well, you grew up knowing, like, you were exposed to this capacity at what, 8? Somewhere really
12.
young.
I'd say 12.
Okay. So here you are, 12 years old, realizing that you can see spirits and talk to them and they talk to you.
Yeah.
And like, what, so give me a sense of, because I think, so this is such a great example of something that is out there, quote unquote, from most people's realities.
Right.
Give me a sense of you navigating that, both whether you call it successfully or unsuccessfully, or you navigating that and getting to what you get to be now, or what you've chosen to be.
What I get to be now, that's such a good way of putting it. Right? I am like so pumped at what I get to be now. It's fucking awesome.
You mean you like yourself?
Oh my God. I do actually. And I love what I get to be in the world.
Isn't that awesome?
Yeah. I couldn't perform the magic in the world that I desperately desired to see and be and have in the world without liking myself. Because like the more I judged myself, the less I had access to all these energies.
Just want to underline, exclamation point that, highlight that. The more I judge myself, the less I had access to all of these energies and all the magic. Because when you judge you do this. And we still haven't heard the answer to the original question, but for me, it's like one of the things I wanted this day to be about was us actually embracing and expressing our magic.
Okay, cool.
Because that's really what, for me, that's what being you is actually about.
Yeah.
But I call it being you because maybe people would be more interested. You know what I mean? It's like,
well,
but that's what it is.
And the thing that's so relevant about being you is that each and every one of us, well, this is my point of view. I'm actually would be interested in your take on it. Each and every one of us is actually required for the whole. So if you won't be you, it becomes this absence of a component that's required to make everything work. And only you can be you. And that's why it's so essential for each and every one of us to be us at all odds, no matter how happy, scary it is, you know.
Terrified.
Terrified.
I like scary too. You know? It's scary.
It's scary.
What is that? It's scary. I'm scared right now. Don't you see?
I'm scared.
It's kind of like if your bones, right? It's kind of like, you know, you're trying to build your bones. You're a growing young, build your bones, and calcium.
Yeah.
I'm so not going to be calcium.
Calcium's like, I don't really like myself. I can't be part of this because my mom told me I was wrong. And
exactly, right? And we are all part of the whole. This is the thing that, but here's the thing about being also is that when you have access to your being, you acknowledge that freely and it empowers. It becomes a gift.
Access to your being is such a huge key.
And rather than needing to pretend that you're not part of the whole, when you're willing to be you, that fact that you are part of the whole becomes something that props you up, that elevates you.
It makes it a lot easier to be you.
Yeah.
I want to go, let's go back to that thing about entities, but also I have a question about access to your being, if I could ask it afterwards.
Sure. Or before, wherever you want.
So I grew up hearing and talking to ghosts, which as a kid, it's like, that was just what the world was. And then when I got to be a teenager, I didn't really cognitively get that it was different, but I got it was different. I was like, so I shut the door for a lot of my teens, which was really unhealthy for me because I have so much connection to the spirit world that if I suppress it, repress it, try to shut it out, it like distorts into all sorts of depression.
See what you did there?
Yeah. So, but I also had access to access consciousness because Gary Douglas, who's the founder, is my father. And so he basically tricked me. And when I was suicidal in my late teens he like tricked me kind of like into getting my bars run and using some of the tools. And I started noticing like I didn't want to kill myself anymore. And I was like, I feel better. I wonder what's going on here. I was like, I started noticing that every time that I used the tools, I was happier. And so I kept choosing more access and kept choosing more access. And then what access does is it gives you more access to you. And so one day, I would have been 20, 21. I was in my apartment in Southern California, and it was like literally someone's flipped on the light switch. There were so many entities in my like tiny little living room. I literally couldn't see the other side of the room, and I knew it was ghosts, and I excarried right out of there. I terrified myself.
Smoke trail leaving
right
the
out of
building.
there. And I called my dad. I was like, "Hey, there's ghosts! I don't know what to do." Drama. And he's like, "That's great, hun." And he was being really positive, and I was like, "I don't want to be a freak. I don't want to be a freak. I don't want to be a freak." And so I shut the door. I refused, and the entities left, but they didn't really leave. I just went unconscious to them. And then 3 months later, I was out at my dad's house complaining because my life was not going well. I was tired all the time. I wasn't happy. I couldn't find my direction. I just couldn't everything wasn't really working. And I was complaining, and he says, "Well, what did you refuse to do?" I refused to talk to the entities. And it was in that moment that I got that my awareness of the spirit world was such a quintessential aspect of my being that shutting it out was essentially like cutting off my arms and my legs and then wondering why I couldn't walk.
Right.
So I was like, okay, I'm scared of this, excited/scared of this, but whatever this is, I'll see. I'll take a gamble because right now I'm in so much pain. I've got to do something different. So I chose to talk to the entities. And then I started opening my mouth about this, what I was aware of with the spirit world. And I started facilitating.
So as you're doing that, goodness, I kind of wish we had a whole day just to, oh, we do. It's called Being You Day. You should try it. It's awesome because being you always wins. No, I'm just kidding.
We're not kidding.
We're not actually kidding. But so you talked about because there's so many people out there that have cut off fundamental parts of their being because it wasn't acceptable to other people.
Right.
Because they couldn't see how they were going to do it or make money at it. They were judged for it. They judged for being too much, all these things, right? And you described this energy of it literally compressing your life to the point where you were getting suicidal, et cetera.
From not being open to it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so as you're talking about this, as you started opening up to it and being willing to actually give voice to it, there's this sense of things starting to go like this. Mm-hmm. Is that how you would describe it? And so for somebody watching who's like, how do I do that?
Right.
Do you have any?
You have to have more courage than your hesitations. Because I remember doing these sessions for people when I was very young and just thinking the entire time, I'm fucking crazy. This person's crazy. Why are they talking to me? Why are they paying me? But at the same time as hesitating and judging myself completely about it, I made myself do it.
Right.
And I think that's really the difference. I think that's really what makes the difference. I would force myself to do things that I was extremely uncomfortable with, that I was very excited/scared of, because I just had to see what was on the other side. I couldn't stand living my life at the effect of my limitations. I just couldn't.
Limitations. Yeah. Okay. So there's a common theme in what we both talked about, that being terrified and doing it anyway.
Yes.
And that one choice, and it's not just one choice you make. It may be the first time you make it, maybe really big choice.
I'm still making uncomfortable.
Yeah, you and me both.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. But at the same time, you're making uncomfortable choices. I continuously make uncomfortable choices. But what I've seen is the people that have fulfilling lives are willing to make the uncomfortable choices.
Right.
Over and over and over and over, because you make one choice, it'll change things, and then you'll be in a whole new situation that you can get greater from by making yet another uncomfortable choice, but following your knowing along the way, not just making choices that are uncomfortable so that you can feel bad about yourself.
Yeah, it's not the thing about doing something that scares you every day. That's not what we actually mean, because a lot of the choices that we've both made for greater have not been terrifying. They've actually been exciting and nurturing and attractive and easy too. Like that does happen too. It's not always difficult.
In fact, I would say it gets to the point where even making an terrifying choice, it becomes way more exciting than terrifying.
I do feel,
you got to get there.
I don't know if this helps. I don't know if this helps, but from what I've now, I can deal with very difficult, challenging things almost all on my own because I have enough practice at trusting my knowing, making the choice, and having it work better than I could have imagined, that I know how this works now.
Yeah.
Like I don't hesitate. I know where to put my foot and then to let the door open. So it does get easier in a way.
I personally, I would say it gets a lot easier. And at least from my experience, because I used to be terrified of choosing.
Really?
Because I didn't want to choose wrong.
Oh, right.
I didn't want to choose wrong. And I always knew that if I was choosing, it was going to be wrong.
Wow.
Because no matter what I chose when I was a kid, I was wrong from everybody else's point of view.
Right.
And, and a lot of people have grown up with that. So they're afraid of choosing. So like Shannon said, just practice choosing and practice choosing and practice choosing and do it from practice. Like, hey, I may screw this one up, but I'm going to practice. At least I'll get more practice
and you will screw it up. Like that's 100% you will mess up. And every time I've messed up, it's gotten me a step closer to being more of me and greater.
Every time. And I'm with you on that every single time. And also, I love what Brené Brown says. She's one of the peeps I like to, listen to because she says some brilliant stuff. And she says, it's not a question of whether you're going to fail. You are going to fail.
Yeah.
You are going to fail. We all are.
Yeah.
And if you're not okay with that, well, get okay with it because it's going to happen. And even if you're not as involved, see, we're both involved and really love the exploration of finding out what else we can be, what else we can do, what else we can choose.
Right.
And even if you're only trying to avoid that exploration, if you didn't avoid it and instead we're like, okay, I'm going to fail. They've failed. Everybody else has failed. Fuck, it's just failure. Let's go. I think I'm going to make that a meme. Fuck, it's just failure. Let's go.
Yeah.
So as you navigated this and you started choosing, this is one of the other things is you see somebody 20 years after going on that journey and you're like,
true. This isn't something this is literally 21 years of really steadfast commitment to trusting me, which I would say eventuated into being me. I didn't know I was being me in the beginning. Like that wasn't that wasn't really my criteria for choosing. I was more like, I got to trust my knowing. So it was me about really like cultivating knowing, which then I discovered was me being me.
Right. That. And when you're being you do just have a sense of knowing. You have a sense of whether to zig or zag because it's like, this is lighter. Oh, that's not so light. But that also is practice. Because you got to realize we've grown up in a world that is basically, if you look at the world right now, it's virtually devoid of people being them.
Yeah.
But we get so inspired when we see those rare individuals that are, which of course is what today's about.
Yay!
Giving people as much exposure to those people who are just being them in a particular way. And, inspiring us to know that we all have the choice.
God, and how liberating it was for me to realize I could just be me. Like, I didn't have to be like you. I didn't have to be like somebody else. Like, in fact, I can't.
Exactly.
And as soon as I realized that, I remember I was doing this radio interview that Max, my husband, organized in Australia years ago. And actually it was for a Talk to the Entities class. It was like the local public radio and I was advertising a class and she was asking me questions. And at the end, she asked me, what famous person, if you could be any famous person throughout history and in the world, who would you be? And I really thought about it. And I was like, nobody, I would just be me. She said, nobody had ever responded with that. I've never, ever wanted to be anybody else,
awesome.
Ever.
Wow. Because I think there are a lot of people out there who have wanted to be other people as a way of avoiding or getting out of a pain, a problem, a suffering, an inability, an incapacity. But and I would say, like, look, if there's somebody out there that you admire for something, recognize that you admire that in them because you have it within you also. Otherwise, you wouldn't even notice it. And you sure as hell wouldn't admire it. And one of the things I tell people to do is write down the list of between 5 and 10 people that you admire and why.
I love that.
And then look at what they have that you admire and acknowledge, if I admire it in them, it must be in me also. And what's it going to take for me to see more of that in myself and be more of that?
Wow, that's really cool. I also like that exercise because I hope that if you do it, you really get to look at the person that you admire too, because we can do a lot of positive judgment. Like I was thinking like on my list, Nelson Mandela would be on my list, but I was like, I don't really know him. I've not even read his book. I should probably read his book. That's like, that's how I need to educate myself more.
Yeah. But also but here's the thing is if you see something, even if it's your projection about them,
Okay.
and like, okay, here's somebody who's willing to make the tough choices, who lives from the power of his convictions, as far as we know.
Yeah.
You know, like these different things. It's like, okay, well then maybe somebody who admires him, which I do also, has that way more than they've been acknowledging. And I've seen that as one of the ways of getting to what's true for us, because this whole idea of the exploration, the discovery, the celebration of being us is like, how do we get there? You know what I mean? And so there are so many clues
How do we get
that can
there?
help.
Yeah. When you said a few minutes ago, you said you're saying it in context, which I can't remember the context, but you said access to their being. How do people lose access to their being?
By being born on this planet to people. That's what I've seen.
And then what have you found gives people greater access to their being?
So many things. You know, my overall answer would be choice and continuously choosing, even if it's wrong. Because in that journey, you course correct naturally to more of what's true for you.
I love that, yeah.
And most people are sitting back here not willing to choose, like I was before.
Right.
And also for me, when I started Access, I was like, okay, I'm just going to choose things. You know, and I tell people now, I'm like, I have screwed up way more things than most people have ever chosen.
I'm going to testify. It's true, guys. He's not just saying that to make himself, you know, it's true. Dane has screwed up. And the thing that I have such respect for is that every screw up, and I love, you're so generous about it too, because you share so much of what you've messed up and how you got through it. And it's just been, I have such respect for that, like to really acknowledge like, yep, I messed up and this is where I had to choose from there.
Thank you. And for me, I do that because I'm hoping to
You've given me
shortcut
so
the
much
journey.
more courage. You've given me so much courage in that way.
Thank you. Thank you. And for those of you that don't know, Shannon ran my bars. And if you don't know what bars is, it's this really light touch thing where somebody puts their hands on your head for about an hour or so. She quite literally saved my life, because I was at a place where I had planned the date that I was going to end my life, because I had done so many things to try to change it. And I have infinite and never-ending gratitude for you, my dear. And I thank you. And I thank you for being who you are. And I thank you for being in the space and the place where you were, where I could meet you and start this friggin' journey of being. Because that's why I wanted to die, because I didn't have access to my being and I gave up hope of ever finding it.
Right. Without really knowing that that's why you were so bummed.
Yeah, exactly. And here you come with your magic hands and access bars. And being always wins.
Yeah,
boom.
Being always wins.
Any last words you want to say to all these amazing people?
Get into it, guys. If not you, then who? If not you, then who?
Exactly.
You got to be you.
Yep. And I want to make it really clear also, and I've said this several times throughout the day, even though a lot of us, you know, will bring up access consciousness and the tools, and that it's been this thing of, it's sort of like I don't know, like octane booster for your car. It's like it makes the journey a lot faster. You know what I mean? But I don't care whether it's access or whatever. It's like, just choose. You know?
I love that. Yeah.
And choose what makes you lighter. Choose what brings you joy. Choose what makes you happier. Choose what seems like it would be fun. And once again, be willing to fail, because we all do, and it doesn't hurt nearly as much as any of us think.
Yeah. And what a cool world would it be if all of you guys were choosing, course correcting, choosing, succeeding, failing, course correcting, choosing. How much more joy would there be?
Yeah.
You know, so
thank you, my dear.
Thank you, Danny.
Bye-bye.